The Senate also directed the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to immediately assess the damage caused by the recent fire attack outbreak at the Headbridge Market in Onitsha and provide relief materials to affected traders. Lawmakers urged the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction to work with relevant agencies to create a special intervention fund to help victims to rebuild their businesses. The resolution followed a motion of urgent public importance moved by Senator Tony Nwoye, who drew attention to the devastating fire incident that occurred in the early hours of March 21, 2026. The midnight inferno gutted the plumbing materials section of the Head Bridge Market near the Ogbo Ogu Medicine Market in Onitsha, destroying goods worth millions of naira and affecting several traders. Deputy Senate President Jibrin Barau commended Senator Nwoye for raising the matter and assured affected traders of the Senate's support while calling for immediate intervention to ease their hardship.
Mr. President, I think that when things like this happen, it calls for sober reflection. And it calls for a proper investigation of the incidents with a view to ascertaining the causes and, of course, the consequences of such incidents. And so, it is a standard practice all over the world that the Federal Fire Service is the first responder in all disaster situations. It is equally a standard practice that the responding period to contain disasters arising from fire is a minimum of 3 minutes and a maximum of 5 minutes. And that means that fire stations ordinarily should be constructed in line with these standards to minimize.
Even if there are adequate equipment and motorized equipment, when you look at the geography and the planning of Onitsha market, you will discover that it will be exceedingly difficult for fire service vehicle to successfully maneuver to the point of incident. I want to emphasize that our markets grow organically.
Mr. President, I think that when things like this happen, it calls for sober reflection. And it calls for a proper investigation of the incidents with a view to ascertaining the causes and, of course, the consequences of such incidents. And so, it is a standard practice all over the world that the Federal Fire Service is the first responder in all disaster situations. It is equally a standard practice that the responding period to contain disasters arising from fire is a minimum of 3 minutes and a maximum of 5 minutes. And that means that fire stations ordinarily should be constructed in line with these standards to minimize.
It knows that the Headbridge Building Materials Market Onitsha is one of the largest hubs for building materials in Southeast geopolitical zone, and it was engulfed by a devastating fire outbreak on the night of 20th March 2026 at about 10:30 p.m. Senate also notes that the inferno, according to eyewitness accounts, originated from the section dealing in plastic ties and high-pressure pipes before it rapidly spread to the adjoining plumbing material section of the market. Senate further notes that the fire raged uncontrollably for over 3 days, causing unprecedented destruction before it was eventually subdued through the combined efforts of Federal Fire Service on Onitsha North local government and local fire service units from Ogidi. Senate observed that the absence of functional fire service outlet and inadequate firefighting infrastructure within the market significantly contributed to the escalation and prolonged duration of incidents. Also observes that the incident led to the destruction of goods and properties valued at over 3 billion naira, including galvanized pipes, brass fittings, water pipes, and other essential building materials. Further observes that the affected traders, many of whom rely solely on the market proceeds for their livelihood, have been rendered economically vulnerable.
Through the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, the eyes have it. We'll bring forward this motion. It clearly shows that it's a wonderful representatives who's alive to the aspirations and the well-being of his people. It clearly shows that he's a wonderful representative who is highly responsive to the feelings and livelihood of his people. You've done very well by bringing forward this motion, and we hope that those who lost their lives, if any, or got injured, those who lost their life, we hope that they rest in perfect peace, and those who got injured, we request that God allow them to have a quick recovery.